Number 10. Harley Quinn. While Harley Quinn's character design and costume has been changed, it's pretty similar to a lot of looks we've seen her in the past. Mostly what we're seeing in her new series is a change to art style, and with her new role as Batman's ally and sidekick, a complete shift over to the side of being a hero. Harley is of course still bringing her unique approach to heroism, so don't panic if you are a fan of Harley's wackiness and standout personality. But considering where she came from, being Joker's sidekick, this is a pretty big change to her character as we originally knew her. If you've been out of the comics for some time and aren't quite as well versed in Harley Quinn's history, you might not recognize her in 2021 as she's gone from full villain to full hero. Number 9. Poison Ivy. Over the last few years, Ivy has gotten a few pretty drastic redesigns, so if you are reading her in 2021 from anywhere along her recent history in the past 3 to 5 years, you might be a little confused when it comes to her look and ask yourself, wait a minute, is that Ivy? Also, who's Queen Ivy? We've seen her go from eco-villain to hero and environmental activist and spokesperson to dead to alive, and split down the middle between those two warring personas, the villain and the hero, when we literally got 2 Ivies. Then from there she became Queen Ivy and got a complete redesign when it came to her costume. Now she's back to wreaking havoc on Gotham, or is she? Time will tell what alignment we'll see for Ivy in the future. But either way, I'm here for the ride. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list, if you want to learn about more cool redesigns and updates to characters that we've seen recently, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Especially in the Batverse, I feel like there's so many Bat characters that have been introduced and redesigned, it's awesome. Number 7. Black Mask. Black Mask not only has a new look and redesign, in future state that is, that I must admit is spectacular, but he also got a power upgrade during the Year of the Villain event. Black Mask was given the ability to change his identity with the added upgrade of an identity changing mask, which is pretty powerful. Also, his suits have gotten admittedly a lot more stylish over the past few years. So for those who remember his classic look, Roman Sionis may have the same mask, but the rest of his look also seems to have received an upgrade. Number 6. The Freezes. That's right, not only does Freeze get a new redesign, but he also gets a huge change in the fact that he was joined by his family, becoming a little supervillain fam jam unit all their own. 2 separate units really. In the main continuity, Mr. Freeze was given a serum by Luthor that allowed him to make his long-lasting wish come true. He was able to revive, cure, and become reunited with his frozen love Nora, who also ended up joining him in a life of crime. Yay! However, while it all started out sweet, their reunion would quickly turn sour when Nora became resentful of Victor for making so many choices for her and, in her eyes, trying to control her. Victor blamed the serum for her change of heart, but I mean, who really knows? I feel like Nora's kinda got a bit of a point, even though I feel really bad for Victor in this scenario. In Batman issue 96, we are treated to an alternate Victor Freeze who commits crimes alongside his sons as a little criminal family unit. Super cute. Number 5. Man-Bat. While so many supervillains are getting power upgrades, additional allies, and more horrifying redesigns, Man-Bat is going the other way with it. Man-Bat is Kirk Langstrom, who ends up joining the Justice League Dark and gets a much more adorable character redesign as a result. He looks a lot less monstrous and a lot more humanoid and cute. Kinda geeky. It's great. He even wears a bow tie. Ah! This is likely a redesign meant to symbolize Man-Bat having tackled some of his personal demons and his move more towards a heroic role as opposed to a completely tortured soul and uncontrollable monster. Villains are menacing, but sometimes what makes them so menacing changes with the times. After all, is what we found frightening, in some cases more than 70 years ago, still considered horrific today? Not always. Join me as we count down the top 10 villain costume redesigns better than the original. Number 10. Loki. Loki has shifted so much in comics. He's technically a different character from that original Loki that first appeared in Venus issue number 6 and again in Journey into Mystery issue number 85. Loki's look originally was pretty silly, especially if we're talking about trying to adapt that look to the big screen and make it look menacing. We do get a version of that sort of original costume in the Loki series when we see an older, bitter, and sadder Loki who actually more reflects that original costume and that original Loki. Loki now appears to look much cooler in the comics and is also much more versatile when it comes to their style. This has also translated to the big screen where Tom Hiddleston's Loki has also gotten more and more dapper and stylish as time has gone on as well. At least that's how I see it. Number 9. Harley Quinn. I know people love the original costume, so this might be like kind of a hot take, but I personally think Harley has had so many amazing costumes and looks over the years that have just improved on what was already, well, good. I'm not saying the original costume was bad, to be clear. So yeah, I'm not saying the original costume that she had was at the level of some of the other ones on our list, low-key, being too much, you know, or too ridiculous, but I am saying that I think her design has only really improved with time. It's a compliment, Harley. Take it. Of course, not all of her looks have been winners in comparison to that original look, but I do think that her current outfit has definitely been one of her best that we've seen so far. And then of course there is her whole Birds of Prey looks, which I loved, and her The Suicide Squad DCEU look, which seems to have been inspired by more modern Harley Quinn comics and video game designs. And to be clear, we're talking about James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, not Suicide Squad. Not David Ayer's Suicide Squad. Those are two very different looks, are they not? Number 10, Lady Deathstrike. I'm often torn when it comes to a character like Lady Deathstrike. When it comes to her initial appearance and costume as a villain, it was an iconic and terrifying look for the character, but over the years I believe we've done right by her to update her look and make her look more refined, but also still terrifying. In fact, the fact that she doesn't always wear the horror of her appearance on her sleeve, broadcasting it for the whole world to see, almost makes her more frightening to me at times. Of course, even without that first iconic look, she still sometimes does like to dress up spooky scary, but I like that now her design usually gives us some more depth when it comes to what kind of villain and character Yuriko Oyama is. Honestly, I also really loved her design in the Messiah Complex. Terrifying, intimidating, but less cartoonish I suppose than her original design. Number 9, King Shark. King Shark is a shark, and has always been a shark, but hasn't always been a great white shark. He's actually had quite a few different looks over the years, although I cannot deny his recent redesign that we got in James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, and which kind of carried over somewhat to his own Suicide Squad spin-off comic series, is probably one of the best ones we've seen in a while. King Shark here is more a humanoid great white, a beast of a landfish who walks around on 2 feet, but is still tough enough to fall more than 20 stories and still get back up somehow. There is also a sweetness and innocence to this cannibalistic creature that we know as Nanaue that comes across both in his character redesign and costume redesign, with how casually he is often dressed. And friends, before we move on to this next point, be sure to go check us out on Facebook if you aren't already. We just relaunched everything over there. It looks super cool, so make sure if you're on Facebook you are following us. Do it now. I'll wait. Number 8, Poison Ivy. My feelings on Ivy are similar to my feelings on Harley when it comes to her costume design. Although I think when it comes to her overall redesign and growth as a character, I actually feel like her changes have been even more significant in comparison to Harley's, possibly just because she's been around, you know, quite a bit longer. Poison Ivy made her first appearance in Batman issue 181 back in the 60s. The look she sported back then has always kind of reminded me of Peter Pan, a sexy lady version of Peter Pan, but Peter Pan nonetheless. I think it's the tights and the shoes, honestly, and the green, or I don't know, maybe the Jolly Green Giant mascot. Yeah, she also kind of has that look going on, minus the green skin. However, now Ivy generally is depicted with having green skin, but fortunately her outfit has evolved and changed with the times, so she's not like full-on Jolly Green Giant. From her going to what she wore originally, to wearing underwear and an open button-up shirt in the Arkham Batman games, to a full dark green bodysuit in modern comics, to something that pays a little more homage to her original plant-covered look with her Queen Ivy redesign. I gotta say actually, that Queen Ivy redesign initially I was like, I don't know about that. And it came around on me. I quite like it now. Number 7, Juggernaut. While Juggernaut still wears his Cyttorak armor, even he has seen some major improvements when it comes to his look over the years. And not just in the costume department either. We've also seen this character change a ton as a person, to the point that now he's a lot more anti-hero than villain even. Possibly even bordering on full-on hero, I'd say. Juggernaut no longer actually wears armor given to him by Cyttorak because he renounced the god, and instead used materials that Cyttorak had left left from the times he basically reached out to Earth to forge his own armor. The result is a much more sleek looking design as opposed to the more clunky and stiff looking armor that he wore when he made his first appearance back in X-Men issue number 12. And that look is still iconic, don't get me wrong. It is quite similar to the overall character design, but a few important tweaks over time have greatly improved Juggernaut's overall look today. Juggy baby is looking good. I like that new armor. Number 6. Captain Boomerang. Boomerang. Oh boy, what a long way this character has come. In fact, the main Boomerang that we've come to know in the comics isn't even the same person anymore. Is it still Owen Mercer now? Owen Mercer is the son of the original Boomerang, and even when Captain Boomerang was the OG, George Harkness, he had quite a different look. Captain Boomerang made his first appearance in issue 117 of the original Flash series, where he sported a boomerang patterned outfit, white scarf and white sash. Also his little hat. This look was something. Honestly, it reminds me of like a flight attendant. And I kind of would like to see it come back, even though it's quite a bit more flamboyant than what Harkness wore in later years, and definitely a lot less intimidating. Still, it's pretty fun. Obviously I'm saying it got better as time went on, but I still like this look. Harkness would later become more synonymous with a more street-inspired look, wearing a trench coat and often covered in boomerangs, but not as a pattern, more as like armament instead, so that, you know, he could throw a boomerang and then throw another one. Boomerangs all over the place. Boomerang patterns and blue outfits with little hats. I need to do a cosplay of that original look. Number 8. The Joker. The Joker is another character who has come a long way when it comes to his different looks. While his iconic face paint has remained, he's had many different outfits over the years, and many different iconic pieces that we would identify as being part of his costume. Purple and green remain the Joker's colors, but instead of wearing a suit with like a ribbon looking tie that kind of reminds me of something like a child would wear, like a kid in the olden days, or some kind of like floppy bolo tie, he is typically seen more in a trench coat that happens to be purple. Also, if anyone knows what that tie is called, it's like a little bow, but it's like a string. Let me know in the comments. I don't know what that's called. I do not know. The Joker looks less ridiculous and more menacing in modern comics, with the pranks of his earlier days also getting twisted along with his appearance. In more modern comic book tales, Joker has also been particularly terrifying, at one point having removed his face and stapled it back on in Death of the Family in 2011, and at another point sporting his own intimidating Joker-inspired batsuit during Joker War in 2020. Both of these are great looks, but very different looks. Number 7. Toad. Toad has also had a lot of different looks throughout the years, with his original one being the most ridiculous. And also fitting, but also so ridiculous. But I'd say the real cool thing about Toad is that a lot of the time his outfits actually really reflect how he's feeling inside and his evolution as a character. This is why at first it's really no surprise that Toad basically is dressed up as a court jester in his first appearances. At that time that was basically what he was, acting as Magneto's often disappointing goon who wanted nothing more than to please his master, but usually kind of failed at doing so. Toad? As time went on, Toad would come to realize that he didn't actually need to settle for Magneto's mistreatment of him, and that he was no longer really indebted to Magneto. In various depictions of the character, he'd become somewhat more independent, and sometimes a lot more Toad-like in terms of his design. Fox X-Men movies, I'm looking at you. And in terms of his roles, he also even went from being a villain at Magneto's side in the comics to kind of a weird ally of the X-Men when he became the school janitor in Wolverine and the X-Men. Remember when that happened? He also at one point got a flaming tongue. So he's changed a lot. I don't know if I'm as here for the weird green flaming tongue, but I definitely feel like his look is a lot better now than it was before. Also like that he's kinda like a hacker now. I think that's cool. Number 6. The Riddler. The Riddler originally looked Jim Carrey levels of Riddler ridiculous when he first appeared in Detective Comics issue 140. And that's not a slight to Jim Carrey, by the way. I still love that version of the Riddler. Just also a side note, when I call things ridiculous or weird, it's not necessarily an insult coming from me. And while I do have respect for the Riddler's original question mark suit, I don't think it's necessary for him to be covered in question marks so that we know he's the Riddler. He likes riddles. we get it. Riddler has had a ton of redesigns since that first appearance, with a good number of his modern takes being much improved on in comparison. Okay, so not all of the modern takes on the Riddler have been great. See Riddler with his hair shaved into a question mark shaped green mohawk. That was a weird time, but overall I think we can say we've seen a marked improvement. I also do love the recent redesign with Paul Dano playing the Riddler in the Batman film. I feel like this design for the character was definitely one of the most terrifying looks for him yet, and also fit really well with his origin and his backstory, and just with the overall tone of that film, which takes inspiration from the comics but very much grounds the character of the Riddler in reality, giving him more power as well in the process. I think. Like when you make it just not about like silly riddles and you make it about like what is the Riddler and why are there riddles and what is this really about? I mean, it's a powerful character. Number 5. Cheetah. I mean, the Cheetah outfit has changed a lot since her first appearance, and so has the character. The first Cheetah villain we were ever introduced to in the pages of 1943's Wonder Woman issue number 6 is no longer the Cheetah we have in comics. Literally. Much has changed about the character, including her identity, her origin, and her overall look and power set. The original Cheetah was Priscilla Rich, a jealous debutante who dressed up in a skin-tight cheetah onesie. It's a look, I gotta say. Now we have Barbara Minerva as the main Cheetah, who instead of dressing up actually has a humanoid cheetah form, having been transformed basically by a god. Very different looks and takes on this character, but I'd definitely say that Minerva's is better overall. Sorry Priscilla, it's just cooler. Like, I mean, then you get to actually kind of fight like a cheetah lady, as opposed to just a lady in a cheetah costume. Number 4. Crime Syndicate. The Crime Syndicate have always been cool, but over the years their looks have gotten a lot more detailed, badass, and in some cases, a lot hotter. I'm here for the sexy Crime Syndicate, I must say. I'm feeling it. The Crime Syndicate are actually one of the earliest villain teams to take on the Justice League, making their first appearance in 1964 in Justice League of America issue number 29. At least the earlier continuity version of that team, that is. Because this is DC we're talking about here, so you know, now we're on Prime Earth and that was before that, but anyways. Back then their outfits were less sleek and more blocky, such was the time. They were also a lot less sexy back then overall as a team, and had a lot less independent flair, with their looks being just a little bit more rough and basically similar adaptations of the team members that they were mirroring. I mean, Owlman literally has Batman's look from like the neck down almost exactly, with only the Stark owl on his head setting him apart. It's a look. Number 3. Kang the Conqueror. Okay, so Kang still looks pretty crazy, even in the comics, but he's come a long way from that wild purple and green eyesore when it comes to his cinematic appearance at least. We saw our first, likely of many, Kangs in the Disney Plus streaming series Loki. Here Kang was played by the amazing Jonathan Majors, and instead of sporting his very blue face and purple helmet, he was dressed simply in a nice purple robe with green tunic, pants, and sandals underneath. A nice nod to the original design while still providing its own unique take on his look, and a take that is quite a bit more sensible and stylish. Still, an air of flamboyance in how he's dressed, but not so over the top that it undermines how intense, inevitable, and intimidating He Who Remains, aka an alternate Kang, appears to be here. Number 2. Lex Luthor. Lex looks a lot cooler and a lot more dapper in modern comics than his original appearance. Remember when he used to wear a purple suit with green pants? What is it with villains in purple and green? Especially over at DC. What's going on over there? It's kind of a very shocking combo of colors, especially for someone like Lex. Although I will admit, put it into a mech type suit, gloss it up a bit, and it works a little better for me. I do like it. Lex used to wear this purple suit with straps across over it, and a very Dracula-esque high collar with bright green pants and purple boots. Fortunately, he now more keeps to suit and tie looks, looking a lot more polished and refined, and occasionally mixes in some badass mechanical armor, which makes him look a lot more intimidating than that collar ever did. Number 1. Killmonger. Talk about villains who have seen an upgrade. In Jungle Action issue number 6, we got our first look at Killmonger. I don't even think you'd recognize him today if your main experience with this character came from the Marvel Cinematic Universe film Black Panther and Michael B. Jordan's portrayal of him. The original look for Killmonger involved a lot of spikes, as opposed to a lot of horrifying scars. He didn't initially mark himself for his kills, instead, he was just really pointy. He also wore white pants and a red sash, with no shirt initially. We've come a long way since then, with Killmonger having even been to space and back, where he ruled over the Wakandan space empire, and thankfully his look has changed quite a lot since then. I'm partial to his symbiote look personally, still a little spiky, but you know, it doesn't overdo it. Nothing wrong with a little bit of spikes, you just don't want to have too many. Number 5. Scarecrow. Scarecrow already looked pretty terrifying in the comics, but now he looks intimidating as well. Very intimidating. Not just maniacal and crazed. We got a fresh look at the Scarecrow redesign in previews for Infinite Frontier, and then in all his glory in the actual comic itself in issue 0. Here, Scarecrow appears to wear a gas mask with straw or sticks coming out of his head, almost like a crown. He is armed with long fingernails or claws at the end of his gloves, evoking a sort of Freddy from Nightmare on Elm Street feel, especially as these claws seem to be directly connected to vials of fear toxin, which have tubes connecting to Scarecrow's headpiece? That's what it looks like to me. I think the idea is possibly that Crane is producing the fear toxin himself from his own mind and sending it down to these vials to be dispersed whenever he manages to scratch an enemy with one of his needle-pointed claws. All in all, it's a pretty intense look that might leave you asking who this character is, but kind of in a good way, as I consider this redesign to be an upgrade to the villain. Number 4. Catwoman. Catwoman in Batman Earth 1 has come in with a wild new look that will leave you floored. I mean, you will admittedly still recognize her, just not as the Catwoman that you're used to seeing. This version of Catwoman, instead of wearing her typical black or dark purple catsuit, looks a lot more noticeable and bold by comparison in terms of her design, especially for a thief. Here we see Catwoman donning a purple crop top and hot pants with striped thigh-high socks. She still sports a purple color motif at least though, so that helps with the recognition. Also, she has a paw print belt buckle and a cat mask, a literal cat mask, and she's got a cat on her shirt. Still, this look and redesign for the character is definitely very different. Very unique, I would say. Number 3. Bane. Really, Bane's daughter goes by the alias of Vengeance, but she definitely looks and seems to be following in her supposed father's footsteps. Bane's daughter was first introduced in the new Joker series in issue number 2, and is revealed to be the daughter of the supervillain who went through a series of experiments to give her super strength like her dad. Her mission is to get revenge for his death, and she's doing so by hunting down the Joker, who she and many others believe was responsible for the events and many deaths of A-Day. Her father, who was in Arkham Asylum at the time, was one of the victims of that attack and died. So Bane Jr., aka Vengeance, is out for blood. Number 2. Clayface. You really won't recognize Clayface in the new Batman Earth 1 volume. Clayface is not very recognizable here in terms of the story, as he is disguised for most of his appearance and in terms of his character design. Near the end of the story, we learned that Adrian Arkham, Bruce's grandfather, who returned from the dead, was in actuality Clayface in disguise. We're all used to seeing more of a giant mud monster when it comes to how Clayface is depicted, but instead, here we get a very kind of, I don't know, smooth looking baldy figure in the end, who appears to really kind of just be a man. Like a man who can shapeshift, but just a guy. Like a guy who, if you saw him on the streets, you wouldn't run in terror from him or anything. You might just notice his skin was like a little odd looking in terms of its texture, but that's about it. Other than that, he looks pretty average. Number 1. Two-Face. The Earth 1 version of Two-Face sees the character completely reinvented in a way you might not have expected, which is what makes it so great. On Earth 1, Harvey and his sister Jessica are working together to clean up Gotham alongside their good friend Bruce Wayne. After Harvey ends up dead, however, Jessica and Bruce are forced to continue their mission to eradicate corruption and crime in Gotham without Harvey, working on in his honor. But Harvey lives on in more than just their intentions. It turns out that Jessica develops a dissociative personality disorder, in essence becoming her brother due to the trauma of his loss. At least that's what it seems like if we had to explain it on paper. Although never explicitly called Two-Face, the duality of this version exists in the goodness of Jessica and the contrasting ruthless aggression of Harvey. Honestly, the story is so good, you really need to check out the new Batman Earth 1 Volume 3, because even knowing where this story goes, even though I just told you that part, it's still an amazingly compelling read, so Go read it, even though you kinda know spoilers now. Number 5. Trapster. Trapster was once known by the unfortunate name of Paste Pot Pete. Well, he's still not an A-list villain. Trapster's look and name are at least a lot better than what he was originally working with. He was once a villain who simply was obsessed with a glue gun, sticking people in place and sometimes clumsily getting trapped in his own glue. Fortunately, from there the character was expanded upon and changed his name, sick of being ridiculed, making his whole thing more about creating traps than just, trapping people in glue. I think overall a good decision from Trapster's point of view. Unfortunately, many heroes still tease him from time to time as they still remember the days when he was known as Paste Pot Pete. Yeesh, they will not let him forget. Number 4. Despero. Despero used to have a weird gill side hawk and an orange jumpsuit, but now he's got like a gill mohawk and looks like a badass. For those of you unfamiliar, Despero is actually one of the oldest enemies of the Justice League of America. He made his first appearance in Justice League of America issue number 1 from 1960. In other words, he's pretty old school. Not only has his look completely changed, but his whole deal is pretty much changed as well. When we first met Despero, he was a villain who was all about mind control and playing lots of chess, not known for his physical prowess. Over time, the depiction of this Kalanorian alien villain changed and he became more known for his strength than his fondness of chess and his mind games. Although the modern character of the version from Earth Prime has both super strength and psionic powers. So too did his appearance change, with him trading in that jumpsuit for a cape and, some prominent abs. Cause that's what makes you look scary, I guess. Gotta have the abs, gotta be real jacked. I do like though when he was like, I will play chess with you, ha ha ha, I'm a villain. We need more chess-based villains. Someone make that, please. Number 3. Magneto. Magneto was such a rectangle head back in the day. Don't tell him I said that though, please. I don't want him to come for me. But seriously, when it comes to Magneto's overall look, he's come a long way from just being a pair of piercing blue eyes peering out of a very boxy helmet. His look has always been iconic, that I definitely cannot deny. But over the years it's become a lot more refined and complex along with the character. When Magneto first appeared on the scene, he was kind of more of a two-dimensional evil mutant hell-bent on ruling over the humans and planet Earth, having mutants take their rightful place as the dominant species, Homo superior as they were known. Over time, his struggle became more nuanced as we learned more about his own backstory, which was quite tragic, and how he was mistreated, and it made a lot more sense that Magneto would want to fight for mutants who he felt had been marginalized, as he had been himself many times over through the course of his life. With this depth, his look also gained a lot of depth, and today, no matter which outfit he has on, he generally looks stylish, gentlemanly, and, well, all-powerful. As well he should. That upgrade? That's a 10. Number 2. Ultron. Ultron has come a long way since his first appearance, disguised as the Crimson Cowl in issue 54 of the Avengers, and then introduced fully as the menace known as Ultron 5 in issue 55. Even then, he'd already apparently come a long way from his first model, his first design, which was revealed in a flashback in issue 58 of the Avengers, where this crude yet workable robot calls inventor Hank Pym his daddy. That was quite a crude looking version of Ultron. Since then, Ultron has become more and more menacing in his appearance as time has gone on, with one of the most terrifying redesigns of the character appearing, for me at least, in the alternate reality from Marvel's What If Disney Plus series, where he actually succeeded in taking over Vision's form. The more humanoid Ultron looks to me, which is basically what also has happened over time with his design, with him even at one point fully merging with his father, Hank Pym, in the comics, the more terrifying I find his appearance to be. And what is really the point of a redesign for a villain if not to make them more menacing, horrifying, and intimidating to readers and the heroes they come up against? I mean, you're either going for more scary, I think, or more depth. Or ideally more depth and more scary. That's the best. Number 1. General Zod. General Zod has received a major upgrade when it comes to his look over the years. Oh my goodness. And this improvement has made him a lot more intimidating when it comes to his overall appearance in the comics. When General Zod first made his appearance in Action Comics in issue 283, we really only saw him in a flashback panel where it was revealed he was condemned to spend 40 years trapped in the Phantom Zone. Oh no! He appears as just a guy in a green uniform, not particularly muscular, wearing little booty shorts? Possibly no pants? It's hard for me to tell if his pants or tights are just the color of his skin or if they are non-existent, as I'm really only looking at, like scans of this. So he's either just running around in green short shorts and matching knee-high boots, or he's got tan pants on. I'm not sure which. But either way, he's got his underwears over his pants or just no pants. Now, General Zod is less associated with the colors of tan and green, and is more affiliated with the colors of black and red, often donning armor in those colors and sporting menacing yet cleanly shaped facial hair, really evoking those kneel before Zod vibes in the present. I mean, I can't even believe it's Zod when you go back and look at that original appearance. Woo! Looks so silly.